The king is dead. Well, perhaps not dead, but no longer on his chair. This is a review of the Sigma 65mm f2 DGDN lens, which you can buy an L mount and a Sony E mount. If you saw my video on whether or not I should get autofocus lenses, in that video I was wondering how the Sigma 65 lens will compare. I reached out to Sigma UK and they kindly sent me their 65mm lens to test. This video will hopefully give you all the basics about this lens, and more importantly it will show you how it compares to both the 50mm APO and also one other lens, which will be a surprise. I'll give you the basic facts about this lens, some usual pixel peeping photos, some real life sample photos with the models from Poland, and then we'll have a conclusion at the end whether or not this lens might be for you and whether or not I was impressed enough to buy it. Hi guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. So if you've seen this channel before, I'm a portrait and wedding photographer, and so I normally specialise in model photography, often in black and white. This is video number 3 or 4 from Poland, but if you've missed the others, I recommend actually watching video number 1 first, because the portraits I'm going to show you in this video are shot with the mist filter explained in that video. First impressions about this lens, I'm actually going to keep that till later because it's going to be more relevant when I show you a different lens, so stay with me on that. You do get a lens hood, a magnetic lens cap and a standard lens cap. It gives you a close focus distance of 0.55 meters, which is close enough to get a really nice shallow depth of field and headshots for portraits. And it has a 62mm front filter thread. Size wise, it's slightly smaller than the 35mm lens I tested in the last video, and it weighs in at 405 grams, 14.2 ounces. Talking of size, here's the Sigma 65mm next to my Voigtlander 50mm f2 APO. As you can see, it's bigger than the APO lens, but what about image quality? Now, if you've seen this channel before, I've even tested it against the Leica SL Summicron 50 f2 APO, and to my eyes both lenses gave a comparable yet different rendering. I was interested to see how the 65mm could do. First I tested it at home, comparing it up close, shooting both lenses at close to minimum focus distance, photographing here my M3 with a Jupiter 8. I'm showing this lens in particular because I'm sure some of you are getting bored of all these model lenses, so don't worry, old lenses will be coming again soon. Looking at these images side by side, the sharpness is amazing from both lenses when shot at close focus distance, even wide open at f2. I did the similar testing when I was in Poland, photographing the 35mm lens, and you can see it's just sharper every aperture up close at the minimum focus distance. What about infinity? Now, I've never had any problems with the Voigtlander 50 f2 APO, and so I just presumed I'd use this as the benchmark and then we can see how we get on. So for the infinity test, I shot off the balcony where I was staying in Poland. I was looking at the edge sharpness in particular because both lenses are pretty good in the center, and the difference between the APO and the 65mm is absolutely huge. I would say the APO at f5.6 is equal to the 65mm at f2, which is like mind blown. The fall off is much greater on the APO, and it's nowhere near as sharp at the edge compared to the 65mm from Sigma. So I was a little bit shocked. I was so impressed when pixel peeping that I actually took a probably less than 10% crop of this top corner of the image and posted it on my Flickr, and I think this is shot at f8. You can see it on my Flickr, and the detail is just absolutely ridiculous. I cropped it as a bit of like an X-Pan style crop, so that's compared to the APO, but I also wanted to compare it to an autofocus 50mm lens for any fellow Leica L mount shooters. When you look at the options, as I covered in the autofocus video, the most common option that most people go for, if not the Sigma, is probably the Panasonic Lumix 50mm f1.8. So I spent my own money, I bought it used on eBay, and now I have, as you can see here, the Lumix next to the Sigma. This brings me back to the build quality, which I skipped at the start. You don't appreciate how nicely made the Sigma lenses are until you get a similar autofocus lens from a different brand. So normally I'm comparing, say, Sigma to Voigtlander or Leica, and Sigma's okay, but when you compare it to the Panasonic lens is like a plastic toy lens and not very rewarding to hold or have on your camera in terms of the looks and the feel. And the Sigma is so much nicer made. So well done, Sigma. I didn't really appreciate this until I got the Lumix lens. The Lumix lens is very underwhelming in terms of the build quality, but I'm sure hopefully it will do well optically. That brings me on to my optical test. I've only done very basic testing. I rushed it through for you guys to make this video before sending the Sigma lens back. So this is me testing the Sigma lens 65mm f2 to the Panasonic Lumix 50mm f1.8. And from my testing, the Lumix is probably equal to the Sigma at f2.8 when the Sigma is f2. So what I'm trying to say is the Sigma is one stop sharper than the Lumix, which seems to hold true from the comments that you guys kindly gave me back in the autofocus video. The Sigma is definitely sharper, but the Lumix does seem to take quite nice photos. I've yet to do any portraits, so hopefully I'll find some models and do that in a future video. Just my own mind, I just want a cheap autofocus portrait lens to keep in my bag for whenever I need autofocus and I want to say hold a reflector and use the camera one-handed. The rest of the time I'll stick to using manual focus lenses. I find them much more rewarding and much more involved. I prefer to zoom in, know that I've got the photo in focus before taking the shot rather than autofocus, and it's not quite the same level of rewardingness, if that's a word, compared to using manual focus. And then as promised, what about some real photos with the Sigma 65mm f2? So here's me now back in Poland. The colours from this lens are good. There's not a huge amount of vignetting wide open, but as you stop the lens down, that reduces. Sharpness does increase as you stop down, but it's already impressively sharp wide open. I now wish that Sigma or someone would make a film camera to accept hour mount lenses. Although I think this lens is too sharp for my portraits on digital, I think the sharpness on film would be fantastic. So if someone wants to make us an L mount film camera, that'd be great. And if you want one as well, let us know in the comments if that sounds like a good option. And so with that, as mentioned in the first video from Poland, all these portraits I'm about to show you are shot with the Leica SL, the Sigma 65mm, and then I applied a mist filter to try to get a more filmic and hopefully slightly more creative looking image. So all these photos are shot wide open at f2. Shot in RAW, and then I just apply my Mr. Leica black and white preset, and so I shot 3,000 images in Poland. One click, applied the black and white preset, copy and paste across all 3,000 images, and then send them to the models. Yes, sometimes I need to correct exposure if the sun was going in and out, but to the most part, that's a really quick way to mass edit your images. The feedback I get from the presets, other people are finding them useful too. So if you want those, click the first link in the description below. If you want to see how I'm lighting my portraits, definitely recommend you checking out my Patreon, which is my teaching platform, mostly to do with portraiture and model photography and obviously Leica. And yeah, you might find that useful if you're getting into portraits. Okay, and can I recommend this lens? I would say yes, to the most part. If you're shooting portraits, I would try and use some sort of softening or editing in post to make your images a bit softer on the skin or where necessary. But for everything else, if you dislike sharp images, this is an amazing lens. It's a good size and it's much nicer made than the Lumix lens I've just got. If you saw my video on the 35mm Sigma, where I said it was too sharp, and the 65mm is even sharper, you're probably saying, why am I recommending this when I was complaining that the 35 was too sharp? In hindsight, the 35mm is great at what it does. It's just not perfect for what I want for my portrait. In terms of price, the Sigma lens costs £650 or $650 at the current exchange rate. And with that, if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button. Let us know in the comments below what is your favorite Sigma lens if you're a Sigma shooter. And as always, a massive thanks to my awesome patrons. See you in the next video.